So first of all, welcome everyone who have joined today's webinar, which is dedicated to launch ICCO's World PR Report 2024-2025 edition. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel for those who cannot attend the live session, so at a later stage. My name is András Stanislav. I'm the interim CEO of ICCO. And for those of you who don't know what ICCO is for, it's International Communication Consultancy Organization. And we represent PR and comms agencies around the globe, mostly via local and national PR association, which are the core of our membership. As being the global voice of the PR industry, we organize some key activities like the Global Summit, the Global Awards, competitions for both university students and young professionals. We organize thought leadership and networking events in Cannes, and we produce the World PR Report as well. Beyond that, we also do advocacy work, mainly through the partnership with the Council of Europe and UNDP, via a wide range of working groups filled up with members from multiple countries. And we provide membership services to our association leaders, secretariats, and also direct members. ICCO World Report has been published for more than 20 years now. I've just realized yesterday when I was preparing for this meeting. We invite agency leaders from across all continents to fill out the survey, which is the base of our report. Then that is amended by regional and topical summaries and analysis, and adds up as an overview of the past year and predictions and expectations for the upcoming year. The previous reports are available through our website. My colleagues will share the link to our landing page for the World PR Report, and the current one will be available after this webinar later today. And for today's webinar, I welcome our panelists who give you an overview about the state of our industry from 5 different continents and regions. First, you will hear our president, Grzegorz Szczepański, the CEO of Burson, Poland, to give his opening remarks and the European perspective. Then Kate Midttun from Acorn, representing MEPRA, to cover the Middle East. Then Ciro Reis from Imagem, representing Latin America. Mary Njoki from Kenya, from Glasshouse PR, which has just recently published a report about multiple African countries. Obviously, she's representing Africa. And Aaron Kwitken sadly had to cancel the meeting, so he won't be with us today. And obviously, Paul Holmes, not only because PRovoke Media is a key partner for ICCO and the report itself, and not only because Paul has spent his last weeks in the US, so has fresh insights about the market there, but also because Paul likes moderating panels by setting up challenging thoughts to discuss. So without any further details, thanks, Paul. Thanks, other panelists, for joining. Paul, over to you.
Thank you, András, and welcome everybody. I'm delighted to be back involved with ICCO and the report. We were there when it was born 20-some years ago, and I feel slightly proprietorial about it, if I'm being honest. I think it's been a valuable resource over the years. I'm very happy to be here. We're going to hear from the regional representatives first, each of whom will give us their take on the findings and what it means in their region. And then we're going to move on to a panel discussion about what this means globally. I think it's fair to say that our first commentator will give us a perspective that is both global and European. Grzegorz?
Yes, hello. Grzegorz Szczepański here. I'm a lucky president of ICCO in the moment that we are back with a World PR Report, which is always a good reading, a lot of insights that could be thought-provoking, and I hope you will receive the report shared with you after this webinar later today as a valuable source of insights for you as well. Well, I'll just focus on just few outcomes that struck me most that I found in the report. First and foremost, starting where we see the potential for growth of our business. Still, for me, quite surprisingly, colleagues who responded to our research, which were a few hundreds from across the entire world, still believe that ESG is the area that clients will be investing most. I will already put the star in here, the note that I would like to develop that with you during the conversation, because I think that since we completed our research, many things have happened in the world. So that might be interesting, whether we still believe it's gonna be the thing that the clients will be willing to invest more. The second will be the strategic consulting, which was exactly the same in the last year. Where we see the areas of growth, looking at our competences, here you will find quite an interesting promotion, because first two places are exactly the same also last time. So corporate reputation and strategy consulting are topping the podium, whereas we see public affairs promoting from position number 6 to position number 3 this year, which probably all of us agree that as a consequence of geopolitics stepping into the dimension that is probably mostly influencing our profession in the recent times. When we look at the challenges, the global challenges, that was quite surprising for me, because I tend to stick to them to this, the feeling that the staff is still kind of a most burning challenge, whereas staff recruitments made it to the 5th position in general. Thinking about the business, first 3 are related with the general economy or the state of finances. Number 4, we look at the changing landscape of media as a little bit more challenging, the staff recruitment, which is interesting, and I'm very happy to debate it with you. But looking at the skill set of talents, the ones that we believe will be more decisive while recruiting one, 47% of our colleagues believe it's a mastery of AI tools, which is leading us to the next observation, which is coming from the research, that indeed AI is the next big thing, or it's the current big thing that will for sure have an influence on the industry, if not to revolutionize it. So not surprisingly, when we look at the digital trends part of the report, answering the question, what is our perceived impact of AI tools on the PR industry, there was none saying it will have no influence, literally none. So 68% of us believe it's going to be significant or very significant. For me, as a European, I looked especially at this parameter. So percentage of us that have integrated AI tools into our everyday process. Probably not surprisingly for you, our colleagues from North America, 100%, Middle East, 90%, and Europe only 75%, Western Europe has 73%, Eastern Europe and the other regions even lower, which already is signaling that some of us might be maybe not lagging behind, but probably not perceiving the things the same way as in the most developed regions of our profession. I'd like to conclude this little introduction with the most general questions that we're always asking, which is on the scale of 0 to 10, how optimistic you are about the growth of our public relations market. And the average answer is 6.6, which is, it's making me feel good. It looks that overall we are very positive, looking for the futures of our industry. But we should bear in mind that the research was completed before Mr. Trump stepped into his current role. We see that over the last not even 2 months, such a dramatic change on the entire world that is also having an influence on the PR arena, that I will be very happy to discuss with my other colleagues how this could influence the outcome of the research if we will do it today. Thank you.
Thanks, Gregor. You've cleverly anticipated my first question to the panel, which is which will be about how out of date this is already, given the pace at which the world is changing. But I don't want to make this all about what's going on in or coming out of North America. So I think we're going to turn it over now to Kate Midttun from who's representing the Middle East and North Africa, to get her region's perspective on the findings. Kate?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, Middle East and North Africa is a pretty broad region to be covering off. So some really, really interesting perspectives here. So I'm going to launch straight into it because I found it really, really fascinating, just some of the different perspectives that were coming out. But it is really clear in the Middle East and North Africa, PR is absolutely in the spotlight. It's more powerful, it's more trusted, but it's also more scrutinized than ever before. And I have to say, it's abundantly clear that in our region, we're shaping a future for the industry in a pretty spectacular way. So I'm going to break that down a little bit further, because that's obviously quite a big statement to be making so early on. But the results are showing that we are leading, we're not lagging. So we're setting the pace in profitability, in corporate reputation, and in purpose-driven business. CEOs are placing trust in PR to drive their strategic vision in a way that certainly I haven't seen in my 16 years in the region. We're responding by investing more in training and developing skill sets and advising more than most other disciplines. PR is absolutely stepping up. PR firms are no longer just media relation experts. We're trusted to lead on the non-traditional services. So in our region, we're expanding our influence across business functions and also embracing technology at an appropriate pace. So sounds very unsexy to say appropriate pace, but as we've just heard, we're not quite leading in AI, but we are really, we're moving forward on all digital components and AI tools. We're driving digital transformation in a way that is globally leading. So there's also diversity. It's not just a discussion, it is actually happening in action. We're leading in representation that mirrors the demographics of the region. And actually, a stat that I found quite staggering is that every respondent in our region reports having a trained and dedicated D&I professional in their offices. So it's a pretty major milestone, and one that sets us apart as an industry that's actively shaping an inclusive future. And I think really kind of pushing the boundaries for what's possible within our industry, but also our region. So leadership, stepping up, diversity, that's all giving us a winning edge. But there are actually some contradictions in our stats in the report, which I found really, really interesting. So we do have intent, but is it fully realized? So we've got this great diversity representation, yet we're ranked lowest globally in having formal D&I policies in place. So there's there's a visible commitment there, but that structure and the accountability has to follow on from that. So the intent with that policy is really just leaving things on the table there. PR absolutely has an ethical paradox in our region. Another stat that I found really, really interesting, 90% of professionals in our industry see their role as advising clients against unethical behavior. Yet, only 20% believe PR is more ethical than other industries. So you can see there, that's a pretty major perception gap, and one that we really need to be addressing in the coming year or years as we move forward as trusted advisors. But if we want to be this moral compass for our clients, we also need to make sure that we're seen as one for our industry, but also more broadly, the benchmark for other industries as well. We also have a stat on fake news. So we report in our region that we are less likely than other regions to fall for fake news, which is interesting. Are we confident, or are we maybe a little bit overconfident? it's, that certainty might help us, but maybe it's making us complacent, or maybe we've been complacent all along and perhaps not doing the background research that we need to. But one thing is for sure, that as AI generated content and misinformation is, a global issue, our ability to challenge our own biases and make sure that we are really looking at things critically is going to be quite important for us over the coming year. So there's some pretty obvious takeaways to summarize from the Middle East, North Africa in the report. So we need to move from potential to policy. So we've got to translate our leadership in diversity into clear and actionable frameworks. We need to make sure that it's tangible and that there is something, a long-term legacy there behind the great work that our D&I advocates are doing. We need to make sure that we own our ethical narrative as well. If we are the trusted advisors and we want to maintain that position, we really need to make sure our ethical leadership is both visible and also undeniable. We have to believe in ourselves as a driving force for that. We need to stay sharp and perhaps stay skeptical. So confidence in spotting misinformation is important, but as we evolve, we really do have to be vigilant about these things, make sure we're adaptable, proactive, and perhaps push things a little bit further and query things. So for Middle East and North Africa, the report does tell a really powerful story. It's one of leadership, transformation, responsibility, and certainly a lot of optimism. There's definitely a sense that we're shaping the future for PR, not just for today, but for the industry that we want it to be in the coming years as well. In previous years, we've heard a lot about we want a seat at the table, but we're getting that seat. It's really important that we maintain that through credibility and making sure that that trust is not just maintained, but really, really amplified as well. So I'm just going to leave you with one final statement, and that's that in the Middle East, leadership is not just about being ahead, it's about staying accountable to the future. So I'll hand back to you. Thanks, Paul.
Great. That's a good note to wrap it up on. We're going to move on to Latin America now, and we're going to hear from Ciro, who is up quite early in the morning in Brazil. Tell us your thoughts on the findings from LATAM, Ciro.
Okay, good day, everyone. First of all, I would like to share some information about the Latin American context. There are 550 million people in the region, 20 countries, and more than 320 million people connected to social media platforms. I think this is important to give you a context, because some people say, well, you guys in Latin America, there are many Latin Americas. That's the point. Different cultures, despite the fact that in most of the countries, Spanish is the official language. There are many different cultures and way of living. So it's important that to stress that. Well, moving forward to some findings of the ICCO report, it's interesting that we can see some contrasts. For example, the respondents from Latin America, they are the less optimistic, considering all the regions, in terms of seeing a growth in the business. On the other hand, Latin Americans are the most optimistic in terms of foreseeing the demand from clients from non-traditional PR services. So it can be a little bit confusing, but anyway, long story short, this means that in the region we are, I would say, moderate optimistic about the future, and there are some reasons for that. Traditionally, the region is a roller coaster, we have sometimes in different countries very good moments, economic moments, followed by very bad moments. In my own country, Brazil, we have seen 2 presidents impeached in the last 25 years. Argentina is now trying to win the battle against the inflation. Argentina has an inflation of 211% in 2023. Last year, 170% of inflation. Now is going down and now. But just to give you an idea that there are many contrasts in the region. And in Peru has had 7 different presidents in the last 10 years because of political turmoil. So we are used to live in this roller coaster, and which means that we can use a negative lens or positive lens. I prefer the positive lens. I think that despite all those problems the region has faced on the last few decades, there are more opportunities than problems for the PR industry. It's important to mention that there are new investments in the region, especially from China. Peru has opened up a new port, which will allow Latin American countries to avoid the Panama Canal and use this new port to send goods to Asia. So it will change dramatically the economy in the region. So long story short, I think that we can be positive about the future. There's a new generation of PR agencies in the region. And in addition to that, Mercosur countries, which means Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Bolivia, those 5 countries in South America, we signed a free trade agreement with the European Union, which will pave the way to new business in Europe and new partnerships. So there are good opportunities for PR companies. And just to finish my first comments, I think that there are a reasonable number of PR agencies in the region, in the same level of the good PR agencies that we can find in the US and in Europe. So there's a very competitive agencies. They are not the majority, but there are very good agencies in the same level of the same level of we can see in the mature markets.
Agreed. Just to sort of interject some commentary from a global perspective, since we're between Ciro's Latin American perspective and Mary's African perspective. One of the things that has become apparent as we've looked at agencies and at the work that agencies do around the world is that there are world-class agencies in every market. We've seen work from Latin America, from Asia, from Africa, that has been seriously in contention for Best in Show at our global awards competition. And that's not an effort on our part to be democratic. That's a purely organic experience, that there's great work coming out of every market around the world. We've seen winners from Africa. We had a winner in the top 5 campaigns globally last year from Pakistan. Which is certainly qualified as an emerging market. So, we're seeing world-class agencies emerge from many, many surprising places. I'm not sure Africa's even a surprise anymore because we've seen so much good work out of Africa. But Mary, give us your perspective on the findings from your region.
Thank you so much, Paul. Quite excited to be here. So I'll match what I read in the World PR report to the research we did. So we recently did a research in the sub-Saharan Africa, spoke to over 27 PR agencies across 15 African countries. So just to set the context, we find ourselves in a very unique place, especially in Africa. In terms of the demographics, we have over 3,000 ethnic groups, and also we have over 2,100 languages across the continent, mostly the sub-Saharan Africa. So that creates an opportunity where language is such an interesting factor to consider when we are communicating. The other thing is we find ourselves in a continent where 70% of the people are under the age of 30. So therefore, even according to the research that I was given, digital first campaigns are becoming more popular in Africa because of internet penetration, with over 384 million Africans on the internet, and then with mobile penetration and internet penetration, which creates an opportunity for us as PR practitioners to speak to a younger tech-savvy audience in the continent. But then just going back to some of the surprising facts that we found when we were interviewing some of these PR agencies, which is not common across, globally. The most pressing hurdle was there's a lot of misunderstanding of what PR is in Africa. So in most medium enterprises, especially brands that are not international, they find it hard to even separate it from marketing and to understand the value of PR. So there's a lot of conversations that PR agencies and PR practitioners are having in the trying to educate the audience about what plans from clients with low budgets, and also definitely economic instability. Different countries have different challenges, but mostly the economic instability was common, and definitely high expectations from clients, and then low budgets. As I said earlier, digital first campaigns are becoming quite popular in Africa. When it comes to AI, the PR agencies we spoke to, just around 40% of them are implementing AI, and people are yet to discover how to leverage on AI. So it was more on basic tasks like recording meetings, rewriting articles, and scheduling stuff on their email. So people are yet to discover the exact use of AI. When it comes to technology, data-driven campaigns are becoming popular in some of the PR agencies, and it's a skill that is required going forward. And most PR agencies told us that's what they're looking to when they're hiring going forward. Another challenge that we faced, which I also saw in this report, was talent acquisition. So there's a lot of issues when it comes to hiring. We keep hiring from media houses or from rival PR agencies, but still, specifically in Africa, we are yet to find the specific or the best people or talent for specific roles. So those are some of the things that I can comment on at the moment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for those perspectives. Just really interesting to get not just a global view, but views from some of the key markets. And I think that's very helpful. We now have about 25 minutes left for the panel discussion and the Q&A session of this. And on my agenda, that's divided in half. So it's half me moderating a discussion and half me moderating a Q&A. But nobody hires me to moderate anything expecting that I'm going to stick to the rules. So this is how it's going to work. I'm going to keep asking questions until I see something in the meeting chat that I think is more interesting than my next question. And once I see that, I'll start to hand it over to the audience for participation. But I'm quite happy to sort of go through the topics that I think are really interesting here, and there's plenty of food for thought. So feel free to submit your questions. I will try and be as democratic as possible. But if you're all incredibly shy, that won't bother me at all. I'm going to start with the obvious one because it feels like the world has tilted on its axis quite dramatically from the time when this survey was in the field. In fact, it feels like the world has shifted quite dramatically since a couple of months ago when I was in Davos at the World Economic Forum, and people were anticipating something much more incremental in terms of how things are going to change than I think we've seen. And I don't want to make it sound like I have a very America-centric, or let's be honest, Trump-centric view of what's going on in the world right now. But certainly in terms of many of the topics we've discussed already, whether that's ESG, DEI, healthcare, geopolitics, tariffs, the world today looks very different from the world that existed when people were responding to this survey. So I guess my first question for everyone is, how relevant do you think these survey responses are, particularly in terms of the outlook for our industry and the areas of growth for our profession, given everything that's happened in the last couple of months? And Gregor, why don't you go first? But I'm not going to sort of do a clockwork around the screen thing every question, so people should feel free to just sort of interject with their thoughts and answers as we go around. Gregor.
Yeah, first and foremost, I said that I would like to challenge ESG as the thing that the clients will be investing in. I think we already had that feeling a year ago, 2 years ago, that ESG is close to reaching its shelf life. Now it's a proven fact. It's not just US, at least also Europe. You see the deregulation paradigm that is spreading around many countries. So the obligatory ESG reporting for at least the smaller entities will be probably waived. So that's gone. The things that you're referring to are having a dramatic influence, though, to the entire industry, I believe. In Europe, it's very visible. So, we tend to look at the 2024 as the year of election. In fact, in Europe, 25 is as like election year as the previous one, and probably more dramatic. We will see a secondary presidential elections in Romania because of the Georgescu case. So basically, Russia melting situation. We will have the same month presidential elections in Poland. We see the government in Portugal fail. So another parliamentary elections that are outside of the normal timing. Same with Germany at the beginning of the year. So it's still there. And you remember, Paul, I mean, 2 months ago, we've been debating Europe. It's all about the Draghi report, and we will be using the word competitiveness as a driving factor to every narratives. Now it's all about defense and security. The war was there. The war was here already 3 years ago, but it's now so different. So, and that influences where we are. I think that the most influence is on the core of our profession. So if we were 10 years ago saying that the post-truth was the word of the world, No, I don't know. I mean, it's the end of truth, or it's decline of truth. I don't know how to call it. We are the profession based on truth. The business is based on truth, where at least what is relevant in our report, the misinformation was already spotted as the ethical challenge of the profession. Number one ethical challenge of the I think it's a business challenge of our profession, and number one now. So how we can still do what we do in the world where people really don't care about what is true or what is not. What is, I mean, misinformation or disinformation, just the keywords, but it looks like the bigger and bigger groups of people like to believe in what is given to them in the way which is attractive, more sensational, or comparing to the ordinary truth. So I see it is, I mean, AI in it altogether. I think if there will be the question that we are in the dramatic moment of the industry, and we've been proclaiming that many years ago, I think now it's no doubt we are. I just don't know where this is going to head us.
Mary, I'm interested in the perspective from your part of the world, because some of the early actions of the Trump administration have the potential to destabilize Africa. You know, a lot of the cuts to USAID are going to have a profound impact on healthcare in the region, for example. How worried are you about the impact of some of the changes that we're seeing?
So the conversations that actually we are having locally is more on Africa can stand by its own, but yet we cannot ignore that there's been a lot of support in the healthcare, in climate change as well, because the last 3 years there's been a lot of conversation of companies wanting to be part of the climate change conversation. But now coming here and finding ourselves here, most people, or the conversation we are having even with other PR practitioners is how do we empower people to tell their own stories and also to stand on their own, because there's a, how do I put it? In all that, the money, and this is quite political, the money that would be released from the US to the money that would get to, you know, the people is not exactly that. There's a lot of corruption in between. There's a lot of corruption with government. So yes, but then there's also a calling out of Africans. Why can't you stand by your own, and why can't you, you know, stop the corruption and the many envelopes and under the table aspect? Yeah.
So one of the first questions we've got comes from Dalian, and that's about how we ensure a proactive approach to address the global issues, not just reacting, but leading the conversation and the public, the policy development here. And I'm going to come to you, Kate, to ask you about that. Do you see signs of corporations being willing to lead, or obviously it differs around the world? I just came back from the US, where it feels like everybody is hunkered down and the first priority is just not to make yourself a target. But do you see companies around the world having the courage and the will to sort of take a lead on some of these issues?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think particularly given what's been going on in the Middle East, not just over the last few years, but probably the last couple of decades. I think what we really see is we've seen backlash from people being proactive and having a proactive stance on things. I think in terms of willingness to lead in this part of the world, it really is you follow what the government is doing first, which is obviously a very different approach to what's happening in the US at the moment, for example. So I think what we see is a bit of a hesitancy to take a proactive approach as such, but really follow where the government is stimulating the economy and take the lead from that to be able to do messaging off the back of that.
But what about areas like, and this is sort of for everyone, but what about areas like healthcare, where clearly there is now going to be a giant hole, not necessarily just in the provision of care, but in health messaging and health education? Do we get a sense that corporations are going to fill that gap? Because obviously pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies, hospitals, and NGOs all have an interest in making sure that the public is educated and informed and making healthy decisions. Do we see the for-profit or the NGO sector stepping in to fill the gap that is left by the cuts that we're seeing right now in government funding?
So I would say government funding in this part of the world is increasing in healthcare. We are seeing we've seen the merger of G42, which is an AI health tech company, merging with a sovereign wealth fund, and huge developments out of there. And, I think they're quite hopeful that they're leading the world in some of these areas. I think we're probably slightly different in this region, and there is very much an appetite to step up, but also a lot of funding that is going into private sector to pick that up, to be able to take the lead a little bit there.
Yeah. I'm going to sort of, because there's so much to unpack in the report, and I don't want to make this, another webinar about Donald Trump. Let me ask you, Ciro, a question about what I thought was an interesting, if not a contradiction, at least a tension in the findings. So everybody seems to think that providing senior level strategic counsel is going to be a growth area, and that managing reputation is sort of the largest growth area. I think whatever you want to call it, the perma crisis or the poly crisis or just the chaos that's going on in the world makes that likely. But at the same time, I'm also interested in the fact that when clients come to agencies, the most likely request in terms of measurement is still media clippings. A third of clients are still asking for AVE. So how strategic can we be in managing reputation if clients are still very much focused on the volume of media that we generate and how much it would have cost if we'd had to pay for it? That seems to be a contradiction. What are you seeing from clients in that space?
I think that we as a PR professionals, we do need to become more protagonists. So, of course, more and more we compete against the law firms, big global consultancy firms. We do need to stress how competitive and how strategic we can be. And this is a permanent efforts, unlikely or some other mature markets like UK or the US, where PR agencies have had over the last few decades a more protagonist role. In Latin America, we are still moving forward on this, but I think that we have already done a great job in terms of showing the market, showing the companies, showing the clients that we can provide a very strategic and integrated services. So advocacy is a field that has grown in the region, strategic counseling, and me personally, I'm very optimistic about how to prevail in some efforts in the market, but it depends on ourselves. But what you can see in the region, still, when I emphasize the word mature markets, unlikely the US, where you see PRSA, PR firms, organizations in UK, PRCA. In Latin America, we have just a few organizations of PR agencies. So we still need to work together in a more emphatic way. But still, many things to do.
So another thing that interested me in the report was if you look at where people are expecting growth, right, it's areas like strategic consulting, like corporate reputation, like public affairs, like crisis, all of which I think makes perfect sense given what's going on in the world. But the brand building side of our business, whether that's sort of marketing communications or influencer marketing or content creation for multimedia communications, seems to be a fairly low priority for people. Is that an indication? I struggle to interpret what that meant. Does it mean that we feel like we're already making a maximum contribution in the marketing and brand building realm, and so there isn't much growth there? Is it that the traditional media that have been at the heart of public relations for so long are in decline, and therefore the demand for earned first communication is in decline? Because that's not what I think is happening out there. I actually think that companies are more challenged in using the current media ecosphere, which is much more fragmented in most parts of the world than it used to be. And that there's a huge role for public relations people in connecting people, companies and brands with consumers through culture, through sports, through entertainment. And I wonder why we don't see that as a huge opportunity for growth. Do you have any thoughts on that, Grzegorz?
Yes, I have several. First and foremost, and probably everyone on the call who is leading the agency will agree, the least margins are in anything marketing communications related, if any. We do it only from the vanity reasons. So basically, that is giving us the exposure and awareness, so we can demonstrate our greatness in creative. I mean, this market, it's so damn tight. You remember, we've been together in the Cannes Lions. I've been there 3 times only. I remember 2 years ago, everybody was talking metaverse. A year ago, or 1.5 years ago, people were speaking AI. Last year was about fighting for the last 0.1% of attention span of the consumer, so where we can be competitive in it. And so that's one. The second, it's all AI driven. I mean, if there will be the revolution, it's the automation. Consumer communications will be automized. It already is. We are fairly behind. I mean, I'm the lucky member of the huge marketing group WPP, so I see what is there in the AI suite that is being given for the disposal to every employee. It's massive. I don't even have time to adhere to what is launched every week. So I think that the real value is really the real value of what we do is really demonstrated on these 3 leading categories, which is strategy consulting, corporate reputation, and public affairs. And this is where we can really make a business. And I'm really happy that all of us are spotting these 3 areas with the highest potential for growth, because that's where we can make that way we can show the difference between us and the other disciplines related to marketing comms.
Does anybody want to push back on that? Does anybody see a lot of potential in the marketing space, in in what we hear about earned first marketing? and PR's ability to tap into popular culture, or is that just a vanity business now? That seems even for me, that seems a little pessimistic.
Of course, I like to be provocative.
No pushback at all. Okay, then let's.
No, there are two pushbacks. No, there is Ciro, there is Mary.
And myself.
So I wanted to step in here because even in this report, social media and community management is a fast-growing area. And even from the report we did, digital first campaigns are actually our highest growth area with an expected rate of 10.83 in the next 1 year. And you also have marketing communication. So from where we sit, and because of the audience that we are speaking to, and because of the campaigns that we are running, we cannot, I'll push back and say digital first campaigns from our region are really, really growing. And the traditional media from our end is actually dying. I don't watch TV, I watch it online. So the only thing that is outlasting the TV in Africa is radio, which is another interesting conversation that we can go into. So yeah.
Let me pick up on, because we have about 10 minutes left, and it would be remiss of me not to do a dive into AI and what it means for all of us. Gregor brought it up. And the thing that intrigues me most about AI is whether we're going to use it primarily for efficiency purposes, whether we're going to use it to be faster and maybe cheaper, or whether we're going to use it to be smarter and more analytical. And I think that for the first couple of years when we were talking about AI, it was all about generative AI and how we could use that to help us both with written communication and with visual communication to produce faster. The interesting conversations now that I'm having are about cognitive AI and how cognitive AI can help us to predict how audiences are going to react to certain messages, can create synthetic persona, so that we can test messages against, what our audience looks like. Where do the people on the panel see the greatest benefit? Kate.
So what we're seeing here is I think people generally not even afraid to talk to clients about we are using AI and whether or not that's ChatGPT or another format, and far beyond just taking notes. It really is, helping to draft things, or write maybe it's come up with a first draft of a press release, that kind of thing, which I find really, really interesting. But I think what we see is the agencies who are willing to drop their rates and they're in the race to the bottom, and their way of winning accounts is by charging the least amount, who are really just delivering tactical. A lot of their work is getting replaced by AI now. So it's the agencies that have an advantage and have a very rigorous process in their strategic thinking that are coming ahead, because they can get the efficiencies from the research component, or from those, where you would use an account executive or, someone junior in your team to get the work done. It's really helping to leverage that volume of work space. As an agency, we are currently working on we've had an instruction from one of our clients in the financial sector that they want to launch a full AI campaign, and they've done that for various reasons, but we're working through that with them. I think the the idea that AI can solve everything very rapidly and very easily is not quite right. I think there's still a lot that has to go into it. And I actually don't think that AI can really replace creativity at the heart of things either. So it's definitely there. It's making things faster and more efficient. But for the agencies that are not necessarily big thinkers, I think they're really losing out in this space at the moment.
I have a question on the chat from, and please forgive me for what is going to be a horrible pronunciation of your name, Ayatemi, and it's about crisis communication and how important that's going to be going forward, and it's about whether we're going to be engaging with crisis through a proactive or reactive lens. And I think that's a very interesting question in terms of what's going on in the world right now. It feels like things are happening so quickly that everybody is on the back foot and everybody is reacting. I was in Davos in January, and if what people told me they were expecting is true, then there was a massive failure of scenario planning by public relations and public affairs and corporate communications people, because they did not anticipate the degree of chaos that we're seeing right now. The attitude was that the tariffs from the Trump administration would be quite small and very targeted. The feeling was that healthcare people would be able to work with the Trump administration on messaging and on drug approvals. The feeling was that that some of the M&A business would be flourishing because deregulation would make deals easier. The reality in the world is, of course, now the opposite of that. The tariffs have been anything but strategic. The M&A business has declined rapidly in the first quarter of the year for most people. How good are we? And AI is part of this, right? How good are we at helping our clients see the future and predict the most likely scenarios for their business? And do we need to really get better at that in an era where everything is crisis? Any thoughts on that, Ciro? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think that we as PR pros, we are at the right time, at the right moment. We are the right guys, because we are, in a way or another, we are used to put together the pieces of the puzzle, more than the advertising guys, more than the lawyers. And I think that despite all problems we are seeing in this upside down, inside out world, we have very good opportunities to contribute to our clients by giving them an integrated view and helping them to predict the next steps, the next moments that we will probably be seeing. So that's my take.
I hope you're right. I wish I had time to get everybody else's perspective on this, but we are, in fact, at the very limits of the hour that we had planned for this. And so I'm going to turn it back to Andras, and you can wrap it up.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for all the panelists, Kate, Mary, Grzegorz, and Ciro. And thanks for all the attendees for attending this webinar. As I chatted previously, the recording and the report will be available on our website later today. We will let all the 200 plus people know who expressed interest in joining this webinar once the files are up. And we are also happy to attend other industry events throughout the year to talk about key trends and insights based on the report and obviously based on this webinar and all our members from across the globe. I also invite everyone to follow our LinkedIn page and drop off your comments, thoughts, and questions which haven't been answered because we didn't have time for this on the report and to continue the conversation on our LinkedIn page as well. Also, I invite you to join us during the Cannes Lions Festival throughout our PR in Cannes event and the Global Summit in Mumbai in mid-November. And also, if you're interested in joining ICCO, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you again for all participants coming here today. Thanks very much. Have a nice day.